A few years back, all we ever heard about was Bitcoin this and NFT that and Ethereum's going to the moon, Shiba's going to a million, right? We all heard that for a long time. Now, today, I want to talk about what I think is the scariest chart and scariest forecast for crypto that I've seen in a while, but also possibly a sign that perhaps a bottom could be coming. Now, let me just say this. I'm not here to just bash crypto. I bought crypto as early as 2018 and 2019. My average cost before selling all of my Bitcoin was around $14,000. And I sold a chunk of it when it was in the 30s after coming down. So it had actually rose so much on me that at one point I was up $60,000 on just my crypto profits. It was crazy. Of course, I did not close, shoulda, coulda, woulda, close at the very top, but I ended up closing a majority of it in the 35,000 range. And then again, the rest of it in the 23,000, 24,000 range. Just recently, the rest of it. So I sold. I sold it. I bought it in pieces back here and I sold it in pieces back here. Of course, I didn't sell the top. But anyways, my point being, I have no crypto anymore. But I want to show you possibly the scariest cryptocurrency chart that I've seen. And it all comes from this chart down here, the average true range. Okay, so what I just talked about, the excitement of crypto back in the 2020 era when we were experiencing probably the largest bull market eclipse or the peak, the apex of a bull market where, you had so much optimism and so much printed free money from the Federal Reserve. I mean, the Bitcoin world, it benefited massively from the basically the printing of money, right? Because a lot of that extra money went into the hands of millennials and Gen Zs, and what did they do? They threw it right into crypto. So we saw this massive pump assisted by that situation, followed by what we've seen now as an absolute crash where people who have been hodling are basically hodling onto the bag as this thing continues to sink lower. I think that crypto is not necessarily done going lower. In the context of a recession, in the context of a fearful environment, the people who hold crypto, right, those young people on average, they need that money for rent and for groceries and everything as price goes up. So that's been such a crux to the Bitcoin world. Now, I don't necessarily think crypto by itself is useless. Remember, I mentioned I bought some back in the day, but I sold most of it. Actually, I sold all of it over the course of a several month stretch as it continued to sink because of the Federal Reserve's hawkishness, which played a big part in it rising. It also played a massive part in it falling, in my opinion.
Hey traders, would you like some help with technical analysis? Well, lucky for you, we're giving away a free technical analysis guide. That's right, completely free. It's an entire guide all around technical analysis. The guide includes subjects like support and resistance trading, MACD indicators, trend lines, candlestick pattern trading, RSI indicators, and much more. So make sure to click the link in the description, fill out that information, and we'll email you a technical analysis guide right away.
Now, I want to show you the chart that scares me the most about Bitcoin, though, and that is this. People who are hodling, right? They bought back in this area and they're saying, well, someday it'll come back up. You may be right, but here's the scary thing. Based on the average true range, it is looking increasingly lengthy before you ever, even if possible, if it does ever go back to the high, it's looking like it's an increasingly far away point in the future. And here's why. The ATR is the average true range of a daily candle. We're looking at a 1-day chart, and so each one of these candles represents 1 day of trading volume. At one point, when volatility was the highest, the Bitcoin chart was trading around $5,000 as an average true range, meaning each day, on average, the range would be $5,000. Back over here, you can see it was hovering in a nice, healthy, I say healthy, this is very volatile, $3,400 per day. That's a huge swing back and forth on Bitcoin, right? But since then, we have seen possibly the most disappointing chart ever in terms of price growth. We've seen this massive decline, right? At this point from the peak down to now, we're seeing a 72.5% decline. But even more so than that, I think, is that this is super alarming. The average true range at one point was 5 and 3,000. The average true range now is 630. That is a ginormous shrink in volatility. In fact, it's reaching levels of volatility that were traded back when Bitcoin's price, we can line this up a little bit, So it's going back about here when Bitcoin's price was about 12,500. So that's crazy because volatility has basically dried up tremendously. Bitcoin and the crypto market in general, the money has basically done a mass exodus. And the reason that is so scary is because if we assume that this is something that we can justify going forward, right? Now, of course, it might spike higher in volatility as things go up. It can also, by the way, it can spike higher in volatility and the price could go down, right? This is just measuring how much it moves per day. So if it starts moving like crazy, but it's still going down, the average true range actually could peak up. But the scary thing about this is that regardless, we're expecting only $600 ranges on average right now. And some people are making the argument that this is just Bitcoin sort of normalizing, right? Sort of becoming more the norm and actually finding a healthy resting point around the 20,000 mark. But the scary thing about that is that, okay, if that's the case, this extends the expected arrival point for these people to get back to break even. It puts it years into the future rather than just when it was over here. You could swing back up here in a matter of a few weeks of up volume on this level of volatility. Think about it. If price is trading at this point, let's say at $50,000 per Bitcoin, and we have a $3,000 to $4,000 range per day, that puts you at, if you had 4,000 average dollars per day traded or distance per day. In just a couple days, 8,000 could be 2 days, 12,000 could be in 3 days, and in just 4 days, you technically could get like a $15,000 rally on Bitcoin. But $15,000 a day in 4 days seems near impossible nowadays for Bitcoin. Now, of course, like I said, volatility can expand, but the trend here is not healthy. We're seeing a decline in Bitcoin over the past few years in the post-inflation era, or not post-inflation, you know what I mean. The post-cheap money era, when the Federal Reserve was printing a tremendous amount of money in 2020. Now we're doing the opposite. We're trying to shrink the Fed is trying to shrink their balance sheet. They're trying to, print obviously less money. They're trying to cool inflation. The exact opposite thing that what helped Bitcoin is now happening. And so with a shrink up in volatility, a declining volatility on Bitcoin, a Federal Reserve that is incredibly hawkish, to me, there is no light at the end of the tunnel yet for Bitcoin. Now, of course, that could change, and I'm a fairly active trader even within my Bitcoin stuff. And so if I was to trade Bitcoin, I need to see some of the same indicators that I discussed in yesterday's video, which I'll link at the top right hand of the screen about where I think, if the Federal Reserve has a few key indicators crack, we may have an opportunity to buy things like Bitcoin and the stock market at cheap prices. But there will be 3 things that I'll mention in that video I encourage you to watch if you are looking for some more fundamental based analysis. But again, Bitcoin to me, with this level of volatility, with 600, right? Even if you had 10 days of max all the volatility going into the upside, right? Based on the current levels, that would only put you up 6,000, which would just get you back to here. And that's an unlikely, 10-day rally at 600 per on average is only getting you back up to here. So it's like how you need that volatility for Bitcoin to snap back. Sure, Bitcoin might come back over the coming years, but how long? And when you have such low volatility, and if this is the new norm for Bitcoin to trade much lower volatility, there's a couple threats with that. Of course, number one, it extends way into the future. It might be 5 years before it gets back to the highs. It might never get back there, right? This is just assuming that it does get back there. It could be years into the future if we stay at relatively the same levels of volatility. And one other thing that I want to say about Bitcoin is that there are some true fans, there's some true believers in this stuff in terms of the technology of Bitcoin, the value of Bitcoin, but it's the minority. And I don't think that people on mass scale would disagree with that. Most people who were brought into crypto, they were not actually after buying and holding Bitcoins. Many of them were after buying Bitcoins to exchange to get more cash in US dollars later, right? That's just the ugly truth of it. Many people who approached the crypto market during the craze, they bought to sell it later to make money, right? To make fiat money, which is ugly. But here's the thing, that volatility is what attracted them. Right? This amount of volatility attracts the masses. When people hear they can make 30% in a couple days, that's what brings in the retail crowds big time. But when you have 600 on average days or 700 on average days on a $20,000 price tag on an item on the markets, it's a lot less attractive. It's not like trading, Tesla and penny stocks, right? People like that stuff in terms of the retail crowd. I'm not saying that that's smart. I'm saying that that's what oftentimes ends up attracting the retail crowd, is that high level volatility. So I know I sound super bearish, and I mentioned one other thing, that at some point Bitcoin might be an excellent buy. The thing is, with this lower volatility, I think that shows actually something kind of unique to Bitcoin. It might actually be coming into a normalization phase. It might be sort of calming the storm, if you will, and actually sort of solidifying itself as a futures asset, if you will, tradable on the futures market, similar to gold or silver or something like that. It's actually coming into a little bit more of a normal range. And the fact that it hasn't, within all this volatility recently with the equities market, stuff like that, the fact that it hasn't come down to zero shows, hey, maybe it has some validity long term. But maybe Bitcoin is not an investment where you think you're going to get back to the highs in the next few weeks or the next few months. Maybe this thing is something where you buy a little and you expect, 10 to 20% average years gains over the next 10 years. And I'm just speaking in theory, but maybe you expect less volatility on this asset and you treat it more like, sort of an additional component to add to your portfolio, rather than trying to go all in on this thing and expecting these levels of volatility that we saw during, the cheap money phase of financial markets, when interest rates were, at rock bottom levels and super low. Now we see the opposite. And so maybe it's a decent investment in the long term as we start getting into this more, calm era where much of that excited money has left the scene. You might actually get opportunities to buy Bitcoin at cheap prices. And in my opinion, I'll give you my last thought on this. I like the idea of possibly picking up some Bitcoin should we start tapping into the 10,000 mark. I know it's scary, but maybe from there we start seeing that slow rise. I'm still not attracted to Bitcoin at these levels. I would still much rather be buying equities personally. That's just an opinion of mine. I've been buying equities and actually making money throughout this entire period. Well, I shouldn't say making money. I've had some swings on my stock market account that have made some good money. I've also bought a lot of things that are not in the green, but I trust them to go up into the green almost certainly over the long period of time, where I do not have that same faith in Bitcoin. So I know, just a rant on crypto. I'm not trying to sound like a super perma bull or a bear or anything like that, but I think it's worth sticking in my portfolio if it starts getting down into the $10,000 mark. Until then, to me, it is a risk-on asset to the max, and risk-on assets are getting killed in this world, this worldwide sort of market recession fears that we're coming into. Again, that's my thoughts on it. I'm sure people will disagree with me on this. It is a very controversial asset in its entirety. So, this is just my take on it. Please, at the end of the day, make your own decisions about this stuff. But there you go. Thank you guys for watching. Have a great rest of your day. It looks like you made it to the end of one of my videos. Thank you so much for supporting my content. It really means the world to me. And down below in the description, I've put together some of my best resources for aspiring traders who are looking to improve. I've got some free downloads that could help you, some broker recommendations, and if you'd like to join our Discord or get access to some of our trading software, all of that will be linked down below in the description. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.